Now let's talk about an abstract class. Abstract class is a special type of class that cannot be instantiated. Abstract class is designed to be inherited by other abstract classes or concrete classes that either inherit or override its members. You can have all the components in your abstract class that you can have in your concrete class. Properties and methods, however, can be abstract or virtual. We will talk about abstract or virtual a little later. I want to go ahead and create another concrete class called retail salesperson. This concrete class is going to have everything that the car salesman class has. The only thing different is going to be the message in the sell method, which is going to say, I would recommend you to buy this pen. So I will go ahead and create another class, right click, new file. I will call this retail salesperson.cs. Copy the name. Here we go. Public class retail salesperson. And then I will copy over the contents. And we need to import console so we can use its methods. Change the name of the constructor because the constructor name has to match the name of the class. And then I will change this to pen. Okay, so here we go. Now, as you can see, we have two classes that have the same exact functionality for the most part, except one small part which is different. I will go ahead and instantiate the retail salesperson. As you can see, we already have car salesman instantiated, so I will change the second instantiation and make it to be retail salesperson and keep the first name and last name as it was before. So I will say retail salesperson. And there it is. Let's run it. As you can see, it's already breakpointed. So I will go ahead and press play, and we will go ahead and go through this line by line and continue. So as you can see, it says Steve Rogers. Hi, my name is Steve Rogers. I would recommend you to buy this car. Eric Erickson. Hi, my name is Eric Erickson. I would recommend you to buy this pen. So we now see that the car salesman has its way of selling and the retail salesperson has its own way of selling, which makes sense because they are two completely separate methods defined differently. But as you have noticed, once again, there's a crap ton of code duplication. We have rewritten the same code over and over again. This is where the abstract class comes to help. Let me create an abstract class called salesman. We will use the reserved keyword abstract in order to create an abstract class. Let's go back to the Explorer, right click, new file, salesman.cs. Okay. And then I will say public abstract class salesman. And here we go. Now I will take all of the contents from the car salesman and I will put it inside of the salesman abstract class. The only thing I will change is the sell method. I will make it abstract and take out the contents. I will also go ahead and remove everything from the retail salesperson. Then I will perform inheritance. So I will go ahead, grab everything from here, and I will bring it to salesman, put it back. I will actually take everything out from here, and there you go. Salesman has everything. I will just change that to salesman, import console. And then I will actually make this, as I said, abstract, which I will show you what it means in just a few minutes. So now let's go to car salesman, and I will inherit from the salesman abstract class. The way you do it is through a colon. You put the colon after the class that needs to perform inheritance, which is this class, car salesman. And after that, you put the class that you wanted to inherit from, in this case, salesman. So I will say salesman. I will go ahead and do the same thing for retail salesperson. So same thing here. Now notice in both of the concrete classes, we need to add a few things. We need to have a constructor and we need to define individually how sell method is going to work. So I can just say generate constructor, and that'll do that. And then we need to implement abstract class sell. Same thing for this guy. And once again, implement the abstract class. So the reason why we need to have a constructor in the concrete class is because we need to build the abstract class first before we can build anything else inheriting from it. Also, a quick convention, the class inheriting from another class is called either a subclass or a child class, and the class being inherited from is called a base class or a parent class. In our case, the salesman is a base class or a parent class, and the concrete classes are its children or subclasses. Now let's take a look at it here. We have this base reserved keyword. Before, we just knew that the constructor was this part, but now we have colon and then we have this base reserved keyword. Now the base reserved keyword is just here to say that you're using the base class's constructor. So instead of taking the first name and the last name and setting them to the fields in the concrete class, which doesn't have any, we take those and pass them down to the base constructor so that the abstract class can set those fields. So this way, any other class using the salesman class, which is the base class, can have access to those fields as well without having to repeat the same code inside of their own class. Same thing goes for methods, properties, and constructors. So as you can see, we take the first name and the last name and we just pass them down to the base constructor by using base reserved keyword. And base just refers to salesman's constructor, which is right here. So we're setting it all here. And that's what the base reserved keyword does. One quick thing you might be wondering about is what happens when you have more parameters for the child class that might not be going into the base class. And the answer is we just don't pass it into the base class. We set those in the child class. An example would be age. So if we have age or anything else, in this case I just mentioned age. So if we say int age, and this doesn't really go anywhere, but we need it for our child class, then we would just have a field that's a private field here, and we would say private int age, and then we would just say this age equals age. Okay, we would just set it inside of the concrete class or the child class, and the parent doesn't know anything about it. So that's just an example. We don't really need this for our example, and I will take it out and then we can move on. So as you can see, abstract class's purpose is to unify related functionality. In this case, we have two types of salesmen who have similar functionality yet different other functionalities. The similar part is included inside of the abstract class, and the different part is going to be overridden by each concrete class. So let's talk about overriding. As you can see, we're overriding the sell method, which doesn't have much in it. The reason is because it is abstract on the abstract class. So that forces any child class to define it on their own. It could have also been concrete, which could have just been inherited and would not have needed to be overridden. So as you can see, once again, salesman has sell as abstract. So it just says, I don't know how it's going to be defined. And then car salesman takes it, and this is just a method step. That's what it puts in it, but it's just basically an empty method. That's how you can look at it. It's an empty method, and for now it just says throw an exception. So say that this method has not been implemented. That's all this throw a new not implemented exception means. So we can just take stuff out and keep it empty. But for now, each of the classes, concrete classes or child classes, is going to define it on their own, and it's going to say, hey, this is how my sell method is going to work. So I'm going to start from the retail salesperson, and I'm going to say console, right line, and we're going to say string, format. You already know the deal. I already had this sentence copy it, so I'm just pasting it here. Hi, my name is, and then 0, the placeholder. I would recommend you to buy this pen. And then I say this, the full name, and that's that. So that takes care of the sell method on retail salesperson. And then we go to the car salesman and we do the same thing. We just change this to car. Okay. So that's that. Now let's run this. I'll go to the program. As you can see, not much is different. I mean, we have everything else the same. We didn't change any of the instantiations. Everything stayed the same, but in the back end, we have the salesman, everything is different. We have a salesman abstract class. That's the base class for these two child classes, and they have their constructors and their way of defining their own sell methods. So everything else is different. It's been refactored, it's been changed, but on the front end, everything else is the same. So now we're going to run it. So start debugging, and it's already breakpointed. So I'm going to go line by line and go that and then finish the execution. So you can see, same thing. Steve Rogers. Hi, my name is Steve Rogers. I would recommend you to buy this car. Eric Erickson. Hi, my name is Eric Erickson. I would recommend you to buy this pen. So same exact thing, but with less code and much more elegant. So you have the salesman abstract class that defines the base functionality. And then it says, this is not base functionality. This is just something that you have to have, but I don't know how it's going to be defined. And then we just define those on the child classes. So we define it on this guy, and then we define it on this guy, just differently, right? This one says car, this one says pen. Now, this is a pretty simple example, but you can see how complex this can get because each one might have a very, very different definition than this. So once again, abstract classes help us to keep our code scalable, readable, and maintainable, so we don't have to duplicate our code everywhere. Now let's quickly talk about the virtual and abstract keywords. As you saw, the abstract reserved keyword just means that it has no definition of its own, and it needs to be defined on the inheriting class. Virtual means that it has a definition, however one can override it if one decides to. So we could go ahead and give the cell a concrete definition and make it a generic cell pitch, and let each concrete method, or let each child method in this case, decide whether they want to use the generic pitch or want to have their own. So I will go ahead and I will actually copy this and go to salesman and make this virtual. So I use virtual reserve keyword, and then I actually give it a definition. It's not abstract anymore, but I say, hi, my name is so-and-so. I would recommend you to buy this item. Okay, this is a much more generic way of pitching, but it's on it, and we can either use it or overwrite it. And if you go to retail salesperson or car salesperson, see, this part doesn't break because we are able to overwrite it. But if we don't want to overwrite it, for example, for retail salesperson, I will make retail salesperson use the generic pitch. So I will actually take this out, and when you don't overwrite it, by default, you get what the base class has. So on our abstract class, which acts as a base class, we have this cell method, the cell virtual method, which has its own definition. Let's go ahead and run. I will go ahead and run this one more time. So remember, the sales dude is going to have the generic pitch. So it's not going to say, I recommend you to buy this pen anymore. So if we go here, I will actually step in, and you can see now it's not in the retail salesperson anymore, right? Because it doesn't have a method. But instead, it is hitting the virtual method. So now it says, hi, my name is Eric Erickson. I would recommend you to buy this item, right? So now you see that the car salesman hits its own overridden method, and the retail salesperson just grabs the cell method with the generic method, but it has an opportunity to override it. So if I actually bring this back, you'll see that if I run it again, you see that, first of all, this goes into its overridden method, which is the car salesman. So we already know that. And then this one, before it went to the salesman and hit the virtual method. But now, as you can see, it's hitting its own overridden method. So now it's actually going to say, hi, my name is Eric Erickson. I would recommend you to buy this pen. Okay, so here we go. We have talked about abstract classes and inheritance. And next, we're going to talk about interfaces and the difference between abstract classes and interfaces.